I'm Reggie Ponder, the Real Critic, and I'm here with Marco Williams to talk about the 2-hour documentary Tulsa Burning. The real question is, why was this important to you?
Well, why was this important to me? It is such a significant part of our history, and to be able to be part of uh, highlighting it and hopefully providing inspiration, agitation, determination on the part of viewers, and maybe contributing to conversation that could lead to transformation. Look, as every film that I make is important to me, but to be able to tell the story of the worst racial incident post enslavement in American history, uh, uh, inflicted against African Americans, it was something that I had to do. I absolutely had to do. And that's really as simple as that. So you might say that it was a selfish desire, but I wanted to contribute.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for being selfish because I really do appreciate that. And my kind of like a companion question to this is that uh, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people at this point, because it is the 100th year anniversary,
Yeah.
and I hate to even say like the word anniversary. That doesn't even sound right, in this kind of context. But you see a lot of different projects happening right now. So what do you think is the special sauce that you the two directors put in this one versus maybe some of the other ones that might be out there?
It is, we are upon the anniversary, i.e., the events that occurred in Tulsa, in Greenwood, in Black Wall Street occurred 100 years ago, really starting this evening or this afternoon. That was the triggering event. And then May 31st, June 1st, the total devastation of this African American community. So it is an anniversary. Hopefully, what all of the efforts to highlight, to examine, to talk about, to reflect um, are doing is it's commemorating and engaging Americans and hopefully the global audience. I've not seen the other documentaries, and I know that there are others out there, and I'm actually quite glad that there are others out there because each venue has its own audience, and I would rather that as many people learn about this if they haven't learned about it as possible. So I'm grateful for a PBS version, a CNN version, etc. Um, I'm grateful for all the articles that have been written, essays, editorials. I even learned that there was a modern dance piece,
Mm.
virtual reality pieces. All right. So look, one could also say that everybody's exploiting this moment, right? But I think that everybody is seeking to educate and communicate, particularly those of us who are African American, but probably even white Americans who are involved in this. What's our special sauce?
Well, yeah. Yeah, because
Uh,
because you
yeah,
you, you
go ahead.
touch on a number of things here. You touch on a number of things, and I'm gonna get into a couple of those things.
Yeah.
But I think there are some things, an approach that you took, and I want to see what your thought is on that.
I'm going to tell you what it is because now it is a special sauce and it's not as potent as it would have been if I got to kind of just make it for myself, sell it on the street corner and share it, right? So I'm doing something for the History Channel, but they supported this. The special sauce of Tulsa Burning, the 1921 Race Massacre, is to make a film that makes a case for reparations, plain and simple. That's what I set out to do when I took this on. Once I understood the complexity, I read a Human Rights Watch document about why everything that occurred in Tulsa from 1921 going forward warranted a consideration for reparations. I was determined to make a film that conveyed that, not arguing it, not taking an explicit position, but allowing for that to be expressed. So that's to me the special sauce.
Wow, wow. Well. I think you actually did that, and that's one of the things I was going to talk to you about is particularly about reparations. But before I do that, you used the word instigate. is that when you started, speak a little bit more about that. What do you mean by instigate?
Yeah, so here's my feeling. Film is a medium that communicates emotion far better than information. It doesn't mean it doesn't communicate information, but if you are moved, you will absorb the information. If it's just a lecture and you're not moved, what do we do when we get lectured? We tune out. And so the hope was and is that this film will instigate, it will agitate people to question, to demand. And as I said, because of this idea that this is a blatant, explicit example of why there needs to be repair of some sort, that it would instigate conversation and hopefully. And so when you see the film, there's an indictment of the white community of Tulsa, principally the past, government present, but there are no white people in this film, i.e., I'm not engaging white people about how they feel about what happened. I hope that instigates white people to say, oh, how come you didn't include us? Or I understand why our voices are not explicitly there. No, they're white scholars, but I mean white residents of Tulsa. The instigation is the words of the activists in the community, the words of the historians who tell the story of what happened, and perhaps most significantly and profoundly, the voices and the images of the survivors who lived through the massacre and were videotaped in the late 90s by Eddie Faye Gates so that you know for sure what happened from the people who lived through it.
Wow, wow. So what was there's a couple things that was interesting to me. Well, a lot of things that were interesting. I can't even lie. I mean, there was so much stuff that was interesting that was in this piece. You connected 1921 to 2021. You spoke with many descendants, which you just talked about. You not broach, you framed this whole issue about reparations. And then you also talked about the need for proper respect and burial for these people. So I'll try to get into to each one of those things and have you talk about that. So I guess I'll start first with connecting 1921 to 2021. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the explicit relationship of the early 20th century and the events in the early 21st century and the culminating incident of George Floyd being murdered before our eyes is the fact that what occurred in Tulsa in 1921 is the same impulse that really has existed through our nation's history towards Black people, and that is white supremacy. Now, I don't ever use those words because I'm not in the film, but the people who are in the film, whether they be scholars, critics, or residents of Tulsa, they articulate that. And tragically, there's a direct connection between Tulsa 1921 and what we've been seeing for, since the advent of cell phones, police officers killing unarmed Black people. And that there's a moment in the film where we make that connection uh, visually, and I think it's quite clear. So that's one of the direct relationships that I sought to convey about the film, that 2021 is a continuum or connects back to 1921.
It's really interesting because then I'll connect this piece about speaking to the descendants. Is that you actually spoke to one of my classmates, John Rogers, um, about his family, and when I speak to John, I didn't even know that, so that was something new that I'm when I get ready to talk to him, I'm going to ask him a little bit more about. So you spoke to the descendants to really connect that, to say, here's this family. and this is what they missed out on, or this is what they lost. Uh, how impactful was that for you to hear them talk about that?
Yeah, so just taking two people who of others, but two people who are prominent in the film, John Rogers and Brenda Alford. Um, I would be remiss if I don't kind of frame the relationship of Tulsa, Greenwood, and the destruction of it, and today in terms of generational wealth loss, right? If you destroy a community and if you destroy a very affluent community, everything is lost. So no insurance claims, no restitution whatsoever, generational loss. John Rogers is exceptional. He has raised himself up. His family has, despite, or not even despite the massacre, but not despite the entrepreneurial spirit of his great grandfather, J.B. Stratford, but still generational wealth. Whereas Brenda Alford conveys it very differently. She says, and it's the most eloquent, contradictory idea. My grandfather was a proud college educated shoemaker, right? We don't think about you go to college to become a shoemaker, but he was a proud college educated shoemaker and he did everything right, right? That's what she says. I'm
Yeah, she
paraphrasing.
does.
He did everything right. And yet, you know, reaching for the American dream and all they got was the American nightmare. Now, Brenda is equally dignified, proud, successful, but she reminds us of everything that was lost. And in her words, it's really the intangible, right? It's the aspiration for full citizenship.
And that actually pulls us right into the reparations question. So you you do kind of make the case. I don't know if you were trying to be a lawyer here or not, but you kind of make the case piece by piece by piece that there does need to be repair. So you already talked about that there needs to be repair. What does that repair look like in your mind?
I think repair really takes many forms. And so, an apology is essential. And in a lot of ways, there's never been a true apology. Don Ross didn't make it into the film, was a state legislature who asked the Oklahoma State Legislature to apologize for the massacre, they at that time referred to as the riot. And nobody did. So he introduced a bill in which he apologized. So the only apology by the state of Oklahoma comes from a state legislator who was African American who just put it in. So apology is there, and it's sort of out there now that it's been acknowledged. But so an apology, right? Getting up and standing in front of people and saying, we are sorry for what happened. We acknowledge the grave destruction, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll start there. A marker is important. And so there is a marker and there's now a building. These things are important, right? These are memorials. And we know the importance of memorials because we know the effects of the destructive ones, Confederate monuments. All right, so those are a couple things, right? But ultimately, I think it comes to some degree of financial restitution. If you go to Greenwood today, it is sadly like a number of impoverished Black communities throughout the United States. Poppy stores or mom and pop stores, corner stores, you know the term, that don't really sell real food. They're just getting one, real supermarket. You go through the community and you can see that the quality of life, the economic status as well. You go to Greenwood or Black Wall Street, there are a few Black businesses there, but they're not owned by the people. They rent those properties. The community is being gentrified. So I think that there needs to be investment back into that community and ultimately resources given to families, descendants of those who were killed and those who lost property. Now, I'm not in the position to say how much, et cetera, but I think that this is one where the calculus can be made to the approximate loss of wealth. So there is a monetary figure that could be assigned, and you can go from there.
So it's interesting in talking about reparations. At one point, there's a point in the film where a person says, "Look, they just built that building for millions of dollars, but yet
Right.
the you shaking your head. Let me just be quiet."
Yeah. Yeah, this is the, I mean, so it's come out, and I'm so glad that I understood that this was a real obvious uh, problem. How can you raise money and simply build a building that essentially is on the south side of the start of Black Wall Street? So it's still in Black Wall Street because it's on the north side of the railroad tracks. It crosses the railroad tracks, but it looks out on the rest of Greenwood. You get 30 million for this, and what's going to that? It's so obvious that it's bewildering to me. Other than who did it benefit? Who's benefiting from creating that building? Hopefully, it'll be a good museum, a good educational center, but still, you got 30. Why didn't you designate five? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the number should be, but how could you not? It just seems so obvious. And how could you take a position at this point to simply say, and I'm saying at this point because I've been reading the news, that it's the responsibility of the state to compensate. It may very well be the responsibility of the city and state, but you can't, in good conscience, create receive 30 million in donations saying it's for the benefit of the history and not consider what's directly
Wow.
across the street.
Wow. And so yeah, so thank you for doing that. And then talk a bit about the proper burials piece because you didn't gloss over that. You made sure that in this piece, I mean, and you and your directing partner, you guys made sure because I don't want to be disrespectful, that you covered that along the way. That was an important part of, I guess, repair, if you will.
Yes. Obviously in our community, a homegoing is very, very important. And yet the truth is that in every culture, in every community, the ritual that goes with sending somebody off who has passed is is part of our core and our culture. We gather, we honor, we celebrate, we remember. And so the the excavation for mass graves is abstract, but it's also, dare I say, ammunition or evidence for a need for the idea of reparations, for the explicit or more explicit impact on real people. But I chose, and it's really at the early part of the film, to set the table with the idea that these people are doctors, they're veterans, their wives, their children, i.e., they're relatable. They're your family. They're real people, right? And they're not. It's not abstract. And we use images of from that time period, from that community, to make it vivid. So it's setting this stage for that there were real people who lost, and families who never had the chance to say goodbye. And so, they, my understanding is the city of Tulsa will resume the excavation, and I believe they're going to start exhuming the coffins that they found last October, 12 coffins, 13 coffins, as a first step to determine cause of death. So they'll be looking for evidence of burn, gunshot, other forms of trauma. And then further, they will do DNA to see about identifying a gender, race, and then with that, they hope to be able to uh, return to family and ultimately have a homegoing, some sort of honoring burial of them, not just cast aside
Yeah.
in an unmarked grave.
So we're about at time because you've been so
Sorry.
gracious. You've been so gracious to give me your time. I just really appreciate it. So I'm gonna go through a couple of questions, kind of quick fire.
Sure.
So here we go. The the black men going to the jail. People want to say that that was and that's the thing that really started. Can you speak to that real quick?
Sure. The notion that the African Americans incited the riot because they went to demand and protect Dick Rowland, a young African American male who a white mob wanted to lynch, and they went there and they said no, basically no, and they went armed because many of them were World War I veterans. But what it really points to is that this was an organized community that understood its value and
Mm.
understood the cost of a lynching. You let Dick Rowland be lynched for an allegation of an assault, euphemism for rape. What else can happen?
Wow. Well, talk about your decision to put Ida B. Wells to talk about Ida B. Wells because not directly related, but uh, here in Chicago, we revere Ida B. Wells. So talk about that.
I'm Ida B. Wells is very, very significant because she's the person who basically deduced that lynching was never really about the allegation of an African American male assaulting a white woman or raping a white woman. And as we know, we didn't, they didn't. What Ida B. Wells understood was that invariably a lynching or this allegation of assault came out of white resentment and jealousy of African American prominence, success, determination. And she wrote about this in Memphis. I can't remember the exact name of the market. They were very, very successful black supermarket owners because why? Because of segregation. We shopped in our own store, and in the end, they were lynched because they supposedly had assaulted a white woman. And so that's very, very important because in many ways that is what occurs in Tulsa. Greenwood, Black Wall Street is profoundly successful. White people resented that, and this became their way to destroy it.
Great connection. Where did the planes come from?
So in the film, we don't explicitly state where the planes come from, and I think that's just kind of being careful with history. But it is fairly well known that the planes came from Sinclair Oil. So Tulsa was a boom town. Tulsa was oil. And so Sinclair Oil, and of course the affluents, the planes. Now, whether it was Sinclair Oil executives who were up there, I can't tell you, but that's where the planes came from. And as well as there were other wealthy people there who had airplanes because you need to get from Tulsa to Chicago, Tulsa to DC, Tulsa to New York. Where are we going? If you had that kind of wealth and you were not always going to just take the train.
Wow. And then speak a little bit about the highway. How has the highway impacted what we're talking about today?
Yeah, it's the gap in the historical telling of Greenwood that the film doesn't really go fully into, but like in many African American, not just African American, many working class communities throughout our nation, urban renewal, the idea that we were going to improve the community and also the interstate system, that we were going to connect America and Americans, devastated Greenwood all over again. And the residents of Greenwood refer to that period as urban removal, not urban renewal. A highway went right through, dissecting, destroying homes, because Greenwood did rebuild itself, not to the extent of 1921, but African Americans rebuilt. Once that highway went through, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And in fact, I think it's on the History Channel website. I haven't checked. There's a section, maybe a half a mile from Black Wall Street, where there are just steps. It's a street that has steps, cement steps, that go to nowhere, and they're referred to as the stairs to nowhere.
Mm.
And those houses were destroyed not in the massacre, but during urban removal. And it's an evidence of a second decimation or devastation of the Black community.
So of course you got to speak about your co-director because if I can't even be here talking to you without you doing so. So talk about that.
Yeah, look, Stanley Nelson, everybody probably knows about and should know. If you don't, you should know about Stanley Nelson, his body of work, which has documented American history through the African American lens, whether it be Soldiers Without Swords about the Black newspaper. He did a piece on Ida B. Wells, Marcus Garvey, Freedom Summer, Freedom Riders, the Black Panthers, Jonestown, personal documentary. You can see how much respect I have for Stanley, that I know all of his films. He and I did a film about HBCUs. It's called Tell Them We Are Rising, the history of historically Black colleges and universities. So when Stanley reached out to me and said, would you be interested in co-directing and making this film? I, having recently made one with him, my great respect for the work that he does and has done and continues to do, that was another reason to say yes to telling this story.
All right. And then what was left, in your opinion, left on the cutting floor that you really wanted to put in there, but you're like either you didn't have time or really didn't fit the narrative, because you said you might have made a different film if it was just for yourself.
Uh, Everything that I wanted to talk about is in the film. Some things not as in depth as I would have liked, but everything is in. And so one of the things that I would have liked to have done more of, and this is around the formation of the Tulsa Race Riot Commission, the honoring of Don Ross, who really set this in motion when Bryant Gumbel went to Oklahoma City for a memorial for the bombing of the building there. And Don Ross said to Bryant Gumbel, just X number of miles to the east of here, the worst bombing in American history occurred. And Bryant Gumbel did not know anything about it, like so many Americans. This is 60 years after. I wish I could have gotten that in. And the reason it's not in the story fully, and it's important for audiences to appreciate this, is that this movie was made during COVID, prior to vaccines. And so Don Ross, I didn't get Mother Randall, any of the living survivors who are all over 100 years old. I didn't get to interview them because it would have been irresponsible during that time, because we were all nervous. So I was in Tulsa during the height of the pandemic and had to be very, very careful. So there are a few things like that that I just didn't get to do as well. And so the other things that if there hadn't been a pandemic, I would have explored a lot more about the city of Tulsa today.
Okay.
But I'm very proud of the film.
Oh, I am too. And then, of course, we can't speak about this without everybody wants to know about Russell Westbrook, and very, very happy that he used his agency to be a part of this. So maybe you can speak a little bit to that.
I'm as much as I want the Wizards and Russ to win, I don't think it's going to happen. I haven't had a chance to connect directly with Mr. Westbrook, with Russell Westbrook, because he's been doing his day job and doing it quite well. But I think everybody can see the connection. What he played for many years in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma Thunder. He did workshops, entrepreneurial workshops and basketball camps in Tulsa. You can't miss the mural for Black Wall Street. You can't miss the Greenwood Cultural Center and the marker there. And I think as he began to learn about this story, he reached out to a production company, Blackfin, about making a documentary. They reached out to Stanley. Stanley reached out to me, and I guess you could say the rest is history.
So Marco, I'm asking you about Stanley. I'm asking you about Russell Westbrook, and I'm gonna ask you about Russell because I'm a basketball guy, so I want to know what was happening there. But we would be crazy not to ask you this question about the music, man. How did you? It baffles my mind. How did you make this happen?
Yes, so the music for the film is scored by Branford Marsalis, and I'll be very, very frank with you, there are moments in the film where the music will just sweep you away, whether it is, you will feel like you're watching a Hollywood film. The music is so pulsating in certain moments, and there are other moments where it just will pull your heartstrings. And that is the music and the craft and the genius of Branford Marsalis. I'm very fortunate that 100 years ago, I guess it was 1991, I did a short fiction film called Without a Pass. Bradford was at the height of a popularity. He was the music host of the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and he acted in this short fiction film, and he recorded the music. And so he and I have been friends since then. And I'm in this way, the pandemic was very helpful. I called up Branford and said, Branford, you want to write the music for this? And he said, yeah, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not touring. I'm not doing this. And the beautiful thing is this, I went to New Orleans, sat in while they recorded stuff.
Oh,
But as we move forward, I would call up Branford and say, Branford, this sequence, it needs something. And he would say, send it to me. And boom. And so I just look, this film, it's good. It is great because of Branford Marsalis. And so if you want to just hear great music, movie music, great movie music written by a genius, watch the film just for that because you'll love it.
yeah, yeah. I think it takes you through these emotions. So it really is a score.
Yep.
What are we playing during this time to film? What do we play during this time to film? So wow, thanks.
Yeah,
Mr.
I forgot. It's been on my mind because it he has done well. That's why he is Branford Marsalis. What can I say?
So can you invite my viewers to watch this film? You got like 15 seconds to tell them, look, this is
Yep.
what I
Okay.
like. This is why I like for you guys to do it. Can you do that?
Yeah, you got to watch this Tulsa Burning, the 1921 Race Massacre tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. You got to watch it because I think it'll wake you up, it'll move you, and it'll agitate you to the point of demanding repair, respect, and restitution.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate your time. And I will say is that I learned a lot. When you talk about this whole thing, that there's so many people who don't know about it, it feels so shameful, really, to not know of these important pieces of history. And the little pieces that I knew, you guys really supported that with a lot more information. So I do appreciate it. And you're right, it wasn't just information, it was heartfelt. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And I thank you for inviting me to speak with you. I care. This is important. And I hope that this helps to get people to watch.